Tales of is a long-running series. It started all the way back in 1995 and it's still running to this day, and boasts a multitude of different titles from the intervening period. So where exactly does one start with a series that big? Do you just start with the first one? Maybe you go with one of the popular ones? Or maybe you try to go for one of the underappreciated gems of the series? For me, I started with this. Tales of the Abyss. Released in 2005 on the PS2, the game deals with a variety of different topics, such as growth, individuality, and religious dogma of all things. Today we're going to be digging into that game and taking a proper look at the world it creates. But before we do, there's one simple rule I want you to remember.
See, there's three kinds of people: dicks, pussies, and assholes.
That may seem a little odd, but trust me, it'll make sense in time. For now, let's enjoy Tales of the Abyss. So our game opens on, this.
ND 2000. In Kimlaska shall be born one who inherits the power of Lorelei. He will be a boy of royal blood with hair of red. He shall be called the Light of the Sacred Flame, and he will lead Kimlaska Landvaldir to new prosperity. ND 2002. The one who would seize glory shall destroy the island upon which he was born, a land by the name of Had.
So the Tales of series has a long history of unique settings and honestly pretty creative worlds. They're new and different, and they create their own rules that govern everything that go on in these worlds. Sometimes it's spirits, sometimes it's life-giving trees, and sometimes it's sentient singing otters. And these rules are honestly pretty well told, as the games usually do a very good job of weaving them into the plot. Rather than having the entire world explained to you from the beginning, the game instead explains everything piece by piece, and slowly draws you in over the course of the entire game. This is honestly a great method of storytelling, but when it comes to a shortened summary like this, it does make things a little more complicated. Suddenly, every small, otherwise insignificant cutscene carries some sort of important connotation about the world or the characters. So, to stop this video from being an hour longer than it needs to be, I've decided to go for the exposition dump method. It's not exactly the most graceful method, but it'll hopefully save us some time. And as an added bonus, I'm going to throw in a little reward afterwards. A little bonus scene from the game that I couldn't have fit in otherwise, with absolutely no context behind it. With that in mind, let's start here. This is Xillia. She, using the power granted to her by a being known as Lorelei, which I'll come back to later, read a prophecy thousands of years ago. This prophecy is known as the Score. The Score foretold everything. Literally everything. Things like what the weather would be like that day, who would be born, who would die, what major events would be happening throughout the world. Just everything. Now I know what you're thinking. How exactly does a society function when it knows literally everything that's going to happen? Well, it's not really that simple. For starters, not all of the Score is known. Bits and pieces of it are missing, most notably the end. It was also written in a very specific way, which I'll also come back to later, but right now just know that only a few select people can actually read the thing. Instead, the Score has turned into more of a religion. Every year, people have their specific Score read to them. It shows them the path that they should take, and any sort of events that'll happen to them over the year. It is believed that following the Score will eventually lead to the prosperity of mankind, and that any good person should do everything within their power to follow it. Alright, well I think that's enough exposition for now, but first... Okay, our game actually opens with our protagonist, Luc von Fabra. He is an asshole. When he's not busy ordering people around to do stuff for him, he's busy complaining about how terrible his life is. He is a noble, nephew to the current king and son of a high-ranking duke and the sister of the king. We follow him around his manor for a little bit and learn a few things about him. For starters, he's been stuck inside his manor ever since he was a young child. The The reason for this is that when he was an even younger child, he was kidnapped by an enemy nation. The experience was so traumatic for him that it erased all his memories, leaving him with nothing but a case of plot-convenient amnesia. As such, Luke has absolutely no memory of any time before the kidnapping. We also learn that Luke occasionally has these splitting headaches where he hears a weird ethereal voice, but he can't really understand what it's saying. But that's probably unimportant. We also meet some of the people that he usually encounters while inside the manor. There's his mother and father, and a handful of servants, most important of which is a guy named, Guy. Guy, despite being Luke's servant, is basically his only real friend. He's been working under Luke as long as he can remember, and is thoughtful, compassionate, and generally a nice, guy. You know, basically everything that Luke isn't. The final person that we meet is a man named Van. Van Grant is a commandant in the army of the church. Seemingly as a favor to Luke's father, he's been training Luke in the way of the sword ever since he came back from being kidnapped. And what do you know, today just so happens to be one of the days that Luke is getting trained by Master Van. However, it turns out that Van's not going to be able to stick around for too long, as a person known as Phone Master Ion has gone missing and he has been ordered to go look for him. Luke of course whines about this for a little bit, but you eventually just get to training. You go through a couple pretty standard drills before something happens. A strange voice echoes out throughout the courtyard. The guards surrounding it all immediately drop into a deep slumber. Even Guy and Master Van are immobilized by the hypnotic melody. A lone girl appears. She pulls out a knife and advances on Van, swearing he'll pay for his treachery.
Tyr, I knew it!
Who the hell are you?
No! Stop!
Resound. The will of Lorelei shall reach you and open the way.
Not that weird voice again.
The seventh Phonon?
Too late. The seventh Phonons have reacted with each other.
Alright, time for another little exposition dump. Now this is the part of the story that might turn a couple people off, if only because it might bring some flashbacks of...
I've been wondering, what are midichlorians?
Yeah. But just know that it is very important to the story, as it does explain a lot of the MacGuffins that this game likes to throw at you. Okay, so, phonons are tiny particles that exist within everything. They're basically atoms, but instead of having unique makeups of protons and neutrons, instead they have unique vibrations. Each phonon has its own special frequency, which coincidentally creates its own unique sound. There are 6 basic phonons: earth, fire, water, wind, light, and dark. However, there's also a 7th phonon, the phonon of sound. This phonon is a bit different than the others and has many unique properties. It provides the power of healing for starters, and it's not something that you can just learn, it's something you're born with. It was also the phonon used to write the score, hence why only a select few can read it. It is also, however, the most unstable of the phonons, and can cause a phenomenon known as a hyperresonance, seen here. A hyperresonance is caused by 2 7th phonists coming together and a couple other conditions being met. And it can result in a couple of weird effects, but most notably it can result in the destruction of matter. Finally, if enough of a particular phonon gathers together, it can actually gain sentience. These beings are a sort of essence of the phonon. And if you played other Tales of games, they're actually pretty recognizable names. Things like Undine for water, Gnome for earth, Afreet for fire, etc. The 7th phonon also has a sentience, though it has never actually been observed and is purely hypothetical. That is Lorelei, the entity that helped Xillia read the score so many years ago, and is the supposed reason for why the score is read in the 7th phonon. Alright, there's a lot more about phonons, but that's basically the gist of all you really need to know to play this game. So let's go back to our boy, Luke. But first... Luke wakes up in a field of flowers next to... her. This is Tyr, aka...
Extra thick!
She's a kind, quiet, and thoughtful person, though with a tendency to be a little strict, as she spent most of her life as a soldier and employee of the church, in a similar vein to Master Van. She is also one of the few remaining melodists in the world. A melodist is a person who calls upon the power of the 7th phonon, the phonon of sound, using the power of song. In any case, she explains to Luke what a hyperresonance is, but Luke doesn't really understand what she's talking about. She also promises that, well, since she got you into this mess, she is going to make sure that you do get home. Luke uses this opportunity to complain. A lot. Like, a lot.
If you come into contact with monsters like that, you'll have to fight them.
Think you know everything, don't you?
Eventually though, you make it to the bottom of the hill that you're on, and find a man who just so happens to have a carriage the two of you can take back to the capital. After paying with an item that is clearly not extremely important to Tyr, you get in and begin your journey back to the capital, Grand Kokma. Wait, Grand Kokma? That means we're in Malkuth! Alright, I know I just stopped the video, we gotta stop again one more time. The world that this takes place in is known as Auldrant. Auldrant is made up of several continents, but really only 3 nations. To the east there's the nation of Malkuth, to the west Kimlaska, and this island here is Doth, also this city-state Macedonia. Luke is from Kimlaska, and lives in its capital, Vatical. They tend to live on the more industrious side of things, looking for advances in machines and science. This little incident with Tyr has blown them all the way into Malkuth territory. They live more on the artistic side, more of an emphasis on magic rather than industry. Unfortunately, Malkuth and Kimlaska are not on the best of terms and have waged many a war against one another. Most notably the recent Hod War, which caused an entire city to sink into the ocean. The third nation is Doth, and it's rather small in comparison to its neighbors, but holds a lot of sway as it's the nation that is home to the Order of Lorelei, the religion that studies and provides the score to the rest of the world. Think of it as a sort of Vatican City if Catholicism was the only religion on Earth. This is the nation that Master Van is from. In any event, the capital you're headed to now, Grand Kokma, is nowhere near where you need to be. So you get off the carriage in a small farming village known as Engave. It's going to be a long trek back to Kimlaska, so they're gonna need some supplies. Luke, being the asshole that he is, immediately earns the scorn of the villagers, and they blame him for a series of thefts that have been plaguing their town. They bring you to the head of their village, where you meet a tall man in a military uniform named Jade, and a pale, effeminate-looking boy named Phonmaster Ion, aka the guy that Van was looking for. With the help of Ion, Luke manages to prove his innocence, and find out that it was probably a beast known as a Cheagle that invaded the food stock. As you make to leave, Luke wonders why Phonmaster Ion is here, as Master Van was looking for him, and Tyr is also intrigued, as it turns out that Phonemaster is a pretty prestigious title. I mean, if we go back to that Vatican City reference, he would basically be the Pope. But you also bump into a very young girl, who Tyr claims is a Phonemaster Guardian, basically a special guard from the Order of Lorelei tasked with protecting the Phonemaster. Tyr claims that whatever reason Ion has for being here, if his Guardian's with him, it probably is sanctioned by the Order. For now though, Tyr and Luke can just concentrate on getting back to, oh wait, no we can't. Because Luke is so bent out of shape by the fact that the people of this town dare call him a thief, that he makes it his sworn duty to go and hunt down the Cheagles that stole the food and make them pay for what they did. Not in some way to help the townsfolk or any noble means like that. No, purely because they dared to call him a thief and he wants to rub it in their face that he is not.
He's an asshole.
Tyr goes along with this for some reason. Less than a day with Luke and she's already given up trying to reason with him. So the next day you head off to the Cheagle Woods. There you run into Phonemaster Ion. He's surrounded by monsters, but unleashes what looks to be an exceedingly powerful spell. But it does seem to take a lot out of him as he immediately collapses upon casting it. Luke and Tyr help him up and have a little talk with him. It seems that he too is looking to investigate the Cheagles, though for more noble reasons than Luke. He also reveals that Tyr is Van's sister, though Tyr refuses to say why she tried to attack her own brother. Luke isn't too happy with that and demands an explanation, but suddenly a Cheagle walks by, and his blind rage at being called a thief erases all memory of the conversation he was just having. In any case, after a couple shenanigans, you find out that the reason the Cheagles are invading the town is because a group of Ligers have moved into their forest and are demanding food or else they'll eat the Cheagles. The reason they moved into this forest is because one of the Cheagles accidentally burned down the Ligers' original forest. This eventually leads to Luke's group going to negotiate with the Ligers in order to see if we can make them leave. And you get given a translator from the Cheagles. A cute little blob of fur given the ability to speak with a magic ring named Mew. So Luke and co make their way to the Ligers' lair, where they find the Queen Liger. She demands that you leave, though she doesn't really seem bent on attacking, as right now she's more focused on just protecting her eggs. It seems that they're about to hatch very soon, and unfortunately a swarm of baby Ligers could actually pose a significant threat to the village of Engave. So Tyr and Ion agree that the only real option is to kill the Liger Queen and all of her eggs. It's cruel, but it's the only option at this point. Luke begrudgingly goes along, and your party attacks the Liger Queen. It's a drawn-out fight, and while you're able to keep your own, you don't really seem to be doing any sort of significant damage to the Queen. Just when it looks like you might not be able to continue on with the battle, who should appear but that guy from the village of Engave, Jade. He came to the forest looking for Ion, and, well, he just found him. He backs you up in defeating the Queen with a exceedingly powerful array of spells at his command. He quickly wipes the floor with the Queen, and the threat to Engave is dealt with. After the fight, Jade has a little talk with that phone master guardian that you met in town, whose name is Anis. He whispers something in her ear, and she smiles before running off, and Jade turns back to your group. He berates Ion for running off, as well as getting a good jab in at Luke.
Hey, old man, he's apologizing, right? Give him a break.
Oh, I expected you to complain about being dragged into this. I'm a bit surprised.
I like you.
But offers to escort you out of the forest. So, after stopping back at the Treacle Tree, where Mew gets hoisted off on Luke, you make your way out of the forest where you run into Anis, and a collection of Malkuth's soldiers. It seems that Jade has been rather suspicious of you two ever since he met you in Engave. The military of Malkuth had picked up the activity from your hyperresonance, and know that you came here from Kimlaska. Jade takes you into custody aboard his ship, the Tartarus.
Tartarus? What's that? Sounds like toothpaste.
It's here that Luke reveals his identity, Luke von Fabra, nephew to the king and son of Duke Fabra. Tyr explains that it was an accident that you ended up in Malkuth, that it was no sign of aggression from Kimlaska, and mostly a mistake on her part. Jade is inclined to believe her, if only because Luke hardly poses any sort of threat to Malkuth, so he gives you some freedom to wander around the ship and get to know the people that are on board. And you get a bit of a chance to actually introduce yourself to Jade, Anis, and Ion. Ion is overly kind and exceedingly sincere, but he also has a very weak constitution and can be pretty naive at times. Anis, his guardian, has a very happy-go-lucky, outgoing sort of attitude, though it always seems to ring a little hollow. She also has a love for money that sort of borders on an obsession, as when she finds out Luke comes from wealth, she immediately tries to come up with some ways to force him to marry her. Oh, Japan. And finally there's Jade. Jade's just the best. He's an exceedingly intelligent man, but with a sarcastic wit about him that just makes him so damn lovable.
Jeez, you're obnoxious.
He called you obnoxious.
I'm terribly hurt.
In any event, eventually Jade and Ion decide to fill you in on what exactly a member of the Malkuth military and the leader of the Order of Lorelei are doing together. Basically, they're on a mission of peace. Relations between Kimlaska and Malkuth have been deteriorating rapidly, as small skirmishes have constantly been breaking out between the borders. The Emperor of Malkuth has sent Jade with a formal letter proposing a peace treaty to be given directly to the King of Kimlaska. Ion is tagging along as a mediator. They also reveal that there's been a bit of a rift in the Order of Lorelei. A man named Grand Maestro Moz, essentially a high-ranking bishop, has for some reason been trying to stop Jade and Ion's attempts to get the letter to Kimlaska. The reason for why he's doing this is anyone's guess, but the fact remains that he's been a thorn in Jade and Ion's side. And that is where Luke comes in. You see, while Luke may be useless in pretty much every way, he does at the very least know people, for he is a noble. As such, Jade honestly asks you if you'll help him in delivering this letter of peace. Luke is, of course, indignant, but he does agree to help. I mean, even someone like him wants to avoid war at the very least. So you decide to join forces and prepare to make your way towards Kimlaska. But a slight hiccup arises. Just as you agree to help them, monsters suddenly start attacking the ship. Hundreds of griffins carrying Ligers swarm from all sides. Luke, of course, immediately makes to save his own hide, but is stopped by a rather intimidating figure. A massive man carrying a scythe pins him to the wall. He seems to recognize Jade as he calls him the Necromancer. It seems like Jade has quite the storied history behind him. But the attacker standing before you also seems to have a bit of a reputation, as his name is Largo the Lion. He is part of a group known as the 6 God-Generals, a group of powerful soldiers directly under the command of Grand Maestro Moz and Commandant Grants, aka Master Van. It looks like they're here to capture Ion and make sure that letter doesn't make it to Kimlaska. But Jade would prove to be a formidable opponent for Largo to face alone. So he does what every good gamer does when they're faced with a difficult situation.
Do you think you can kill me by yourself?
If I seal your phonic arts.
A phone slot seal?
Jade is set back, but not out of the fight. With a bit of quick thinking, he and Tyr manage to get the drop on Largo. Jade drives a spear through his chest, and Largo drops to the ground, a sight which gives Luke pause. There's no time to wait though, you need to try to save the Tartarus. Luke and Co force their way over the deck into the bridge. Tyr puts the guard to sleep, and she and Jade head inside to try and assess the damage. Luke, being otherwise useless, is left outside his guard duty. Luke, being an idiot, accidentally wakes the guard up. The guard advances on him. For the first time, Luke is forced into armed combat with another person. It's not the same as when you're fighting monsters. This is someone, a human being with thoughts and feelings. He trips over himself, but with a desperate lunge, brings down the Oracle Knight. He's stunned. He just took another man's life. But he doesn't have much time to think on it. Jade and Tyr exit the bridge to see what the commotion was, and your group is set upon by more of the God-Generals. A blonde lady and a red-haired boy take the three of you captive and throw you in a prison cell aboard the ship. Unfortunately, in the intervening chaos, it seems like Ion was captured by the God-Generals, though what they're doing with him is unclear. Annis is missing as well, but Jade and her already had a plan set in motion, so he's not too worried about her. For now, you need to escape. Fortunately, Jade, being the cunning man that he is, had a protocol for just such an occasion set up on the ship. Your group hurriedly make your way out of the prison cell into the entrance of the ship. As you make to leave, you notice that blonde lady God-General returning to the ship with Ion. Where they went is unclear, but you make to ambush them as they come aboard. It works at first, but Tyr gets distracted when she recognizes the God-General. It seems she knows who this woman is, Lagretta. In her distracted state, a giant beast jumps from the ship and tackles her away. Another God-General, a child named Arietta, seriously, the Church of Doth has absolutely no qualms about child labor laws, appears behind the beast. In the confusion, Lagretta also manages to break away from Jade, and the tables have been turned. Now you're the ones with swords to your necks. But the tables turn, again, as another mystery figure appears. Guy. He leaps out of nowhere, catches Lagretta off guard, and with a bit of quick footwork manages to push past the two God-Generals, grab Ion, and make it back to your team. Seeing an opportunity, Jade grabs Arietta and puts a spear to her throat, using her as a hostage. He directs the Oracle soldiers to return to the ship before letting Arietta go. After a quick introduction with Guy and the rest of your party, your group make tracks away from the Tartarus as quickly as possible. After you get some distance, you stop to get your thoughts together, and let Ion have a little bit of rest. Why exactly is Moses' troop trying to attack you and stop this letter from reaching Kimlaska? Ion seems to know, but he claims that it's confidential to the Order, and he'd rather not say. You also get to talk a bit with a guy who, apparently, along with Master Van, has been looking for Luke this entire time. You fill him in on the letter of peace, and being your servant, he's more than happy to tag along with you. You also get to find out a bit about his, personality quirk?
What?
Guy doesn't like women.
I'd say it looks more like a phobia.
But wacky antics aside, unfortunately it looks like you've been sitting around for too long, as some Oracle Knights have managed to track you down. They're only low-ranking knights though, so it's a pretty quick fight. Eventually only one remains, and Luke goes in for the finishing blow, but he hesitates once more. The knight, seeing his opportunity, knocks Luke's sword from his hands. The tables have turned. He raises his sword.
What you say? Oh, that you only meant well, 'cause you did. What you say?
Tyr is hurt, but she's able to restore her wounds. That night, Luke actually has a pretty nice conversation with her, finally learning just a little bit of humility. Having seen what happens when he hesitates, Luke resolves that the next time he's forced to fight, he will respond in kind. He doesn't want to, but he will if he has to. In any event, your group make your way to St. Bina, where Jade and Annis had planned to meet up if anything had gone wrong. Upon arrival, you find that Annis has already moved on, leaving you a letter. So you decide to move on to the next city, Kaitzur, which happens to be the border between Malkuth and Kimlaska. But as your group makes to leave, you suddenly notice something. Your group quickly hides itself behind the gate, when who should appear in front of the city but 5 of the 6 God-Generals. There's the ones you've met before, Lagretta the Quick and Arietta the Wild, and there's also Largo the Lion, who seems to have survived Jade's attack. Oh dear. There are also 2 others that you haven't met before, a masked boy named Sink the Tempest, and Dist, the,
Yours truly, Dist the Rose.
You mean Dist the Reaper?
How is one so beautiful as myself a reaper and not a rose?
There's no point in dwelling on the past. What do we do now, Sink?
Hey.
Yeah. Anyway, the only one missing appears to be that red-haired boy, which would make him Ash the Bloody. It looks like they aren't on to your exact location, though they know very well where you're going. Still, there's not really a lot of options for you. Kaitzur is basically the only place you can get to Kimlaska. So after a few bumps in the road, you manage to make your way there, where you find Annis, who appears to be much the same as before, but none the worse for wear at least. But before he could say much, you're attacked once again by that red-haired God-General Ash. But there's not much of a fight, as who should come to your aid but Van, who orders Ash to withdraw. Ash seems angry, but he follows the order. Surprised, your group have a conversation with Van. He seems to be confused on what exactly is happening, so you fill him in. And he claims that while he does have authority over the God-Generals, they were not his orders to attack your group. While the God-Generals themselves might be aligned with Grand Maestro Moz, Van has no affiliation with him whatsoever, although he does claim some responsibility for not being able to keep his troops on a shorter leash. Tier in particular is skeptical about this, thinking that the God-Generals are actually working under Van and not Moz. Whatever the case may be, Van himself offers to help escort you back to Kimlaska. Your group head to the port where a ship will ferry you back to the capital, but you find the ship in flames upon arrival. It seems that Arietta and a whole bunch of her pet beasts lay siege to the town and kidnap the head engineer. Van tries to stop her, but she claims that she's doing this for Ash before flying off. Van storms out of the town, telling your group to sit back and wait while he deals with this. But as you're making to do nothing, several of the townfolk plead with your group to help. The head engineer who was kidnapped is a very important member of their town, and you're not just gonna let him die, are you? Luke seriously does consider just letting him die, but eventually does agree to help, if only out of annoyance.
Who is he? He's an asshole, sir. I know that.
So you head to a place known as Coral Castle where the head engineer is being held captive. You solve a few puzzles and have a very brief run-in with Sink and Dist, but eventually you make it to the top where you find Arietta and two of her pets. It seems like Arietta has a lot of reasons to hate your group. First off, it turns out that she used to be the guardian for Ion, but for whatever reason, Annis ended up taking her place. Secondly, turns out that the reason she can control beasts so well is because she was raised by them. Specifically raised by one Liger Queen that you just so happen to kill. As such, she lays into your group, and boy howdy does she lay into your group. Seriously, this is the hardest main storyline fight in the game, by far. In any event, you defeat Arietta, take her into custody, save the engineer, and finally set off on the ferry back home. On the way back, you get a few decent character moments, most notably Tyr learning a little bit more about Luke's amnesia. You see, it wasn't just that he forgot his past or the people around them, he forgot literally everything. How to walk, how to read or write or talk. And the reason why he has so little knowledge of the world around him is that these past 7 years have just been spent learning those basic skills. I mean, Luke may be a bona fide asshole, but considering he's only really had 7 years of memories, he could be a lot worse. I mean, at least he seems to be learning something for this journey. In any event, the ferry travels slowly along when what should strike but one of Luke's headaches. But this time it seems different. The voice sounds clearer than before, and Luke's body begins to move on its own. Van happens upon Luke in this state, and helps to calm him down. It seems he recognizes what was going on, as he explains to Luke that what was about to happen was the beginning of a hyperresonance. You see, Luke is the only person in the world capable of creating a hyperresonance on his own. It's an exceedingly powerful ability, one that could change the tide in war. He claims that the royal family of Kimlaska have been keeping him under house arrest for this reason, not for his protection, but to keep him on a short leash so that he could be used as a weapon. This understandably upsets Luke, so Van offers an alternative. You see, if we stop the war, if Luke uses his power in a way Kimlaska could never foresee, he could break free of his restraints and become something bigger. He could become a hero. He leaves Luke with that thought as the ferry stops to resupply in the city of Kessadonia. Your group are forced into a bit of downtime, and in this moment, one of the God-Generals chooses to attack, this time Sink.
Look out!
But before he can do much, your group beat a hasty retreat and make it to the ship before Sink can really do anything. You manage to make it safely out of the ports, only to have your ship immediately boarded by Oracle soldiers. This time they're led by Dist and his giant mecha robo buddy. But honestly, it doesn't put too much of a fight and you manage to send Dist flying into the ocean. Having driven off that attack, finally, you're in the clear. There's nothing between you and returning to Batical. Once back, your group make a beeline for the king. You will deliver that damn letter of peace. You force your way into the king's chambers and confront your uncle. He actually just so happens to be in an audience with the very man who's trying to stop you, Grand Maestro Moz. I mean, it really does look like he's trying to force a war as he lies openly to the king about the state of affairs in Malkuth. But your group set the record straight. Jade provides the letter from the Emperor, and Luke, showing some backbone for once, stands up for Malkuth, claiming that no such war is necessary. The king is set back by the suddenness of all this, but agrees to reading the letter at the very least. For the time being, you might as well rest and say hi to Luke's parents. On the way back, you also run into Natalia, the princess of Kimlaska and daughter of the king. She's also your betrothed, and your cousin. In any case, she lets you know that apparently Van is sentenced to be arrested on sight, as he's the one who's suspected of kidnapping you all those years ago. You turn around to confront the king about these accusations. Van-senpai couldn't do that to me. He's so wonderful and he only finally just noticed me. The king considers this. While he does suspect Van of kidnapping you, there's no real definitive proof of the fact, and so he makes a proposition to Luke. He'd read the letter from Malkuth. It seems a mining city in Malkuth, known as Akzeriuth, has been hit by a poisonous gas known as the miasma. It's a toxic haze that seeps up from the earth. Presumably they mine too deep and unleash it upon the city. The letter was officially asking Kimlaska for aid in saving the people of Akzeriuth. So the king offers a proposition. Luke should head to Xillia as an ambassador for Kimlaska to help save the people. If he does so, they will allow Van to travel with you as your escort, and if he proves to be helpful, that'll prove his innocence. The king also mentions that there's a specific reason that they want Luke to be the ambassador. You see, the score foretold this, as it does everything.
Tyr, read the score that is written on the lower portion of this phone stone.
Yes, Your Majesty. ND 2000. In Kimlaska shall be born the scion of Lorelai's power. He will be of royal blood with hair of red. He shall be called the light of the sacred flame, and he will lead Kimlaska Landvaldir to new prosperity. ND 2018. The young scion of Lorelai's power shall bring his people to the minor city. There, and the rest is missing.
That's right. Luke really is chosen by the score. I mean, Luke could be a hero. Luke immediately rushes to Van's cell to squee about how amazing all this is, but Van puts a damper on his mood. He claims that going to Akzeriuth is exactly what Kimlaska wants. You see, the fragment of the score was cut off that they read. What it really says is that once Luke arrives in Akzeriuth, he will be as a weapon of Kimlaska, and war will be the result. However, Van also has an alternative. The score is never wrong, but the score mentions that Luke will move the people from Akzeriuth, which will result in war. But if he were to save Akzeriuth by, say, removing the miasma, then the people wouldn't have to leave, and the war would be averted. But how do you get rid of a toxic, poisonous gas? Well, a hyperresonance, of course. Something capable of destroying matter at its very essence. Luke, the only being capable of creating a hyperresonance on his own, would be the only one capable of destroying the miasma. Then, at last, he would be a hero who changed everything. One who could be free of Kimlaska, free to join Van as a member of the Oracle Knights, just like he wanted him to all those years ago when Van kidnapped him. Luke is shocked at this revelation, but this is Van, the bestest, nicest, most honest guy to ever live, and oh my god, he's so sexy too. Luke swears he'll follow Master Van's plan, vowing to keep it a secret until he can prove that he is a hero. In any event, you regroup with everyone else and prepare to leave for Xillia. However, it seems like the God-Generals are still aiming to stop you, though they don't actually seem to be working for Moz. I mean, Moz is really just set on following the score, and the score says Luke will go to Xillia, so what reason would he have to stop you? It's tough to say what they're up to. In any event, Van makes a suggestion. Since his being on the team has been made public, why not have him board the boat as a decoy? That way, the God-Generals will chase after the boat with him on it, while the rest of your group make your way to Xillia by land. Luke is, of course, upset at this. Why can't I be with Master Van? But begrudgingly agrees, and you head off to Xillia. Oh, also, Ion was apparently kidnapped last night, and don't expect that phrase to get old anytime soon. In any case, as you're making your leave, who should you bump into but Natalia, who apparently doesn't just want to sit around and do nothing, but wants to help you on your mission to save the people of Akzeriuth. She's a real humanitarian, caring type of person, a real princess of the people, though she can be pretty airheaded at times. Honestly, it's a pretty nice gesture on her part, but your group seem less than enthused to have a princess slowing them down, and they try to turn her around. She argues with your team to let her in, and both sides get a little prickly on the issue, but eventually she reveals that she heard Luke's conversation with Van, at least part of it. Luke, not wanting his secret to be exposed, gives into her blackmail, and convinces your group to let her in as part of the team. Looks like Natalia's here to stay, and after dealing with a few goopy monsters, you make your way towards Akzeriuth. But you don't get too far before... Yes, you run into the final God General, Ash the Bloody. But his face, it's Luke's face. It's not just similar to Luke's face, it's identical. In any event, it looks like they're the ones who took Ion as they run off towards the desert. The people of Akzeriuth will have to wait a little longer, unfortunately, as you need to save Ion from those God General bastards. You'll rush into the desert and eventually make your way to some ancient ruins buried under a mountain of sand. After a quick foray through the underground network, you find Sync, Ash, and Largo together with Ion in front of a door? Sync and Largo attack your group and put up a pretty formidable fight, but ultimately you manage to push them back, so they decide to cut their losses. They offer back Ion in exchange for you leaving them here. If not, they're prepared to bring down the roof of this old catacomb, killing both Luke's group and themselves, showing just how far their dedication goes. But right now you can't afford to worry about the God Generals. You spent too much time searching for Ion and you need to get back to your mission for Akzeriuth. So you agree to their demand and take Ion with you, leaving the God Generals to themselves. You still have quite a long ways to go, but there shouldn't be any distractions in your way from now on. Unfortunately, you don't really have any time to bring Ion to any sort of safe location, so you're forced to bring him with you. It's not too much of a problem, but thanks to his sickly demeanor, it means you have to stop a bit more often than you would like. It's not that huge of a problem, but Luke...
Man, at this rate, we'll never catch up to Master Van. We shouldn't have wasted time in the desert.
What do you mean, wasted time?
I mean wasted time. We don't need Ion anymore. The war won't start as long as I'm around.
What are you trying to convince me of exactly? That you're as useless as an asshole right here? Well, guess what, buddy? I think you just fucking convinced me.
In any event, just before you make it to Akzeriuth, who should appear but one final obstacle. This time, Lagretta, who's come to offer Tyr a position with the God Generals. Tyr, being best girl and all, refuses, and Lagretta attacks your group. She's just as strong as any of the other God Generals, maybe even more so, but eventually you manage to subdue her. One final time, she pleads with Tyr to leave our group, to leave Luke, the Reject. The term reject seems to stir something in Jade, as for the first time ever, he seems genuinely angry. He, the God Generals, and even Ion seem to know something about Luke, but they all refuse to explain, which certainly doesn't help Luke's little mood. But, at the very least, you've finally made it to Akzeriuth, and the town is far worse than anyone could have imagined. Bodies line the streets, people either dead or too weak to move. It's a horrific sight. Your party rushes up to try and help the people. Well, I mean, most of them do. Luke wouldn't want to get his hands dirty now, would he? But I mean, why should he bother helping anyway? He's the ambassador, for God's sake. All he needs to do is neutralize the miasma and everyone will be saved, right? He just needs to find Master Van so they can start their plan. Your group search the city, and one by one everyone breaks off to help out where they can, until only Luke, Mew, and Ion remain. You arrive at the very center of the mine, where you find Master Van. He's standing by a door, one very similar to the one the God Generals took Ion to. It seems that it's a seal of sorts, one that can only be broken by a special art performed by a phone master. Van asks Ion to open the seal, to which Ion is hesitant, but Luke agrees that you should open it. I mean, we can trust Master Van, can't we, Ion? Ion takes a second, but nods and opens the seal for you, and the three of you head inside. But before Luke enters, a voice calls out to him. It's like those headaches from before, but this time it's different. It's Ash. Ash demands Luke stops before he destroys Akzeriuth. Just like we're going to listen to a God-General. Inside, you find a massive pillar of light known as a Sephiroth. Van claims that it is the source of the miasma, and that if we use hyperresonance here, we can finally neutralize it and save Akzeriuth.
Good. Concentrate just like that. Now, foolish replica Luke, unleash your power!
What the hell? Something's coming out of me.
Luke, listen to my voice. Now relax, just like that.
When I order you to release your power, you will open every phone slot in your body and unleash a hyperresonance. That same power you're using right now. The trigger phrase will be, Foolish Replica Luke. You've finally proven useful, Replica.
Van? Damn, we didn't make it.
Ash, why are you here? I told you not to come.
Too bad. I also brought the sister you tried to save. Let me go! I'm going to die here too!
I'd intended to save Ion with that, but now I have no choice. I can't afford to lose you.
Van, I knew it! You've betrayed me! You said you were going to preserve these outer lands. What about the people of Akzeriuth, the Oracle soldiers and the Tartarus? They'll all be killed!
Hysterica, someday you'll come to understand the folly and ugliness of this world. I want you to live, at least long enough for me to see you come to your senses. You have the phonic hymns. Use them.
You wake up in a strange place. The sky is dark. You're surrounded by a thick purple sea. Tyr's hymns were able to protect you from whatever it is that happened, but the rest of Akzeriuth wasn't so lucky. You watch, powerless, as everything around you sinks into an ocean of mud and miasma. Fortunately, it looks like you landed near the Tartarus, and it looks like it's able to float above the mud, a safe haven in this sea of despair. Once on board, Tyr mentions that if you head west, you'll reach a city, and seems to be the only one among you who understands exactly what's going on. Alright, this seems like a good time for another explanation. I swear this is the last one. You see, the world of Auldrant is not what it seems. Thousands of years ago, a terrible miasma began to permeate the land. It came directly from the Earth itself, and slowly poisoned everything on the land. So Xillia read the score, to find a way to save the planet, and came up with a plan. The plan was to raise the crust of the Earth into the sky, away from the miasma. To do this, they created what is known as the Planet Store, essentially a massive machine that artificially creates phonons and disperses them throughout the world. With an overabundance of Phonons, they'd be able to power and use the Sephiroth. The Sephiroth are 7 pillars of Phonons strengthened artificially, which create a sort of tree of light. These Sephiroth had the power to raise the entirety of the crust into the sky, saving it from the miasma and leaving a hollow, empty center known as the Qliphoth. Here it turns out it's from the only city remaining in the Qliphoth, known as Xillia City. It's a city only known to a select few from the Order of Lorelei. In any event, this entire time, the entire world that you've known has been floating, artificially suspended, above the center of the world. In any case, what happened to us then? Why are we in the Qliphoth? Well, I mean, the Sephiroth are what support the land, they keep it from falling, so if one were to disappear, it might cause the area above it to fall, but it would take a tremendous amount of power to destroy a Sephiroth. Something on the scale of, say, a hyperresonance.
I don't know anything about it. I was just trying to neutralize the miasma. He told me that if I caused a hyperresonance there, the miasma would disappear.
My brother deceived you, and you destroyed the pillar that supported Akzeriuth.
No, that can't be.
Van ordered you to stand next to the passage ring. Those passage rings are what produce the pillars. Tyr is probably right. I was careless. I never dreamed that Van would make Luke do such a thing.
I wish Luke had at least discussed it with us beforehand. Neutralizing the miasma could have waited until the residents were evacuated. Of course, there is little point in saying that now.
Yes, Akzeriuth is gone. Thousands of lives lost in an instant.
Are you saying it's my fault? It's not my fault! Master Van told me to do it! I had no idea this would happen! No one told me! It's not my fault! It's not my fault!
Colonel?
I'm returning to the bridge. If I stay here, I'll just be irritated by some ridiculous ranting.
What's your problem? I tried to save Akzeriuth!
Ever since you lost your memory, you're like a completely different person.
You all couldn't do anything to stop it either! Don't just blame me!
You're right. I'm powerless. But still.
Ion, don't even bother talking to him. He's not worth it.
It's Master Van's fault, not mine, right, guy?
Luke, don't make me think even less of you.
I was stupid for starting to think you had some good in you.
Why? Why are you all blaming me?
Master, cheer up!
Shut up! What do you know?
A lot of my people died because of me. So, I can understand what you're feeling, Master.
Don't compare me to you! Don't compare me to...
Luke and co. arrive at Xillia City, where you run into Ash. He accosts Luke. I mean, how could he let this happen? How could he destroy Xeriuth? Luke tries to protest, but Ash brushes him off. How could a replica be this defective? So, we're treated to the true twist of this game. Luke never had amnesia. He never forgot his parents' faces or his past or anything like that. He never had a past. Luke, from the beginning, was a replica, an artificial copy created by a forbidden science known as Thaumaturgy. His body was a mirror of Ash's in every way, but at the end of it all, he's just an object, created by Van to be used and then discarded. It's too much for Luke to handle. He draws his sword and prepares to face Ash.
Get out of my way, replica! Shut up! Bangblade range! You made me slip up. You're lying. I'm not... I don't want to acknowledge it either. To think that Drek like you is my replica. To think that trash like you stole my family, my home, everything from me. I'm going to be sick. Die!